Alrighty. Hello, everybody. We are live. Let me know if you can see my screen or can't hear me or anything, but I think everything's good. I'm getting better at setting this up. I just recorded an episode of the podcast. That'll go out tomorrow. I was on vacation this weekend, so no stream yesterday, and there'll definitely be less people today, but whatever. I'm around. Chelsea drew Crystal Palace 1-1. Pretty bad, feels bad, but I think it was a pretty good performance, and I think there's a lot to like. On the stats side, 2.4 to 0.5 xG, 5 big chances to 0, 13 shots to 9, pretty good. You are gonna live with that 10 times out of 10, and you're gonna win it 9 times out of 10. From an X point standpoint, I bet you it was real high. If we look at Understat, which I haven't gone to Understat in a long time. Understat has, let's see what they have the X points at on that. Yeah, so they have it even higher, which is pretty crazy on XG. What is it on X points? Let's see if I go to stats. Yeah, 2.9 X points. That's you win 93% of the time. That's crazy. So, you'll live with it, man. It happens. I think the thing that's most interesting about this game is how different the two halves were. So, in the first half, Chelsea were lights out, created quite well. They did a good job of getting inside. That's not what I want. This is what I want. So, the build was very different. So, Joe Tillett asking you to explain, we had Caicedo dropping into center back and having Palmer deeper than Gusto and Enzo. So how Chelsea have been building lately has either been a 3-diamond-3, so 6, fullback comes inside as an 8, and Enzo inside as an 8, and then Palmer comes in as a free 10. What this was very different. This was Cucurella as a natural fullback, Neto, Jackson's here, Palmer is here, and instead of having Caicedo and a fullback as a pivot, Caicedo split the center backs, and Fofana was wide, and Palmer would be free to come in and come low. And when Palmer comes low, the thing that I think Enzo is trying to do is that both Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez are not good at receiving facing their own goal. Neither of them has that shiftiness or ability to kind of drop a shoulder and evade pressure. We saw a really nice moment where Caicedo plays an entry pass and Palmer's being pressed like this, and he just drops the shoulder and goes, and it starts a big transition the other way. And I think that's also why Maresca quite likes Lavia, is that he has that same quality, and really Enzo and Caicedo don't. The other thing, and we saw that Enzo did this after Caicedo went to right back when Gusto went off, is both of these guys are good passers, but they're really good passers facing forward. So when they're facing forward, you can get them on the ball, and it's easier. And it's now them with the burden to break the pass as a passer, and not Fofana, who is not a very good line-breaking passer. But he is a very good dribbler when he breaks it. I thought both center backs had excellent games. But that's kind of what the build looked like. Other than that, I remember being told that was Caicedo's biggest strength at Brighton. Caicedo's very good at bouncing it around the corner. So, if imagine he receives an entry pass to someone on his back, he's very good at receiving this pass and just going straight out to a fullback. And when it's De Zerbi ball, which is very pattern heavy. So if we compare on the spectrum of build-up coaches, right? There's Sarri and De Zerbi, who are very rote patterns, very strict. The center back passes here, and the 6 passes here, and the 6 passes here, and then the 10 passes here, and that's how it goes. And then on the other end, there's I don't know, Poch is no real build-up patterns, but there's people worse than him. Maresca's kind of in the middle. There's some patterny stuff. Against Servette midweek, we saw a lot of up, back, and throughs where you'd break the line here to bounce here to then go. but Caicedo is like quite good at executing the patterns, but he's not amazing at like drop the shoulder, turn and go. He's not terrible at it, but he's not amazing either. And Palace are no slouches. Like they're pretty organized. Glasner's a real coach. So I thought it was an interesting thing to try. I don't think it was super effective. Like it was fine. It was fine, but I don't think they really they created a lot, but it's like it's a transition for the Jackson goal, which is 1 XG. It's 0.97 or something, which is a huge proportion of what they create. But 1.4 is still quite good. But then it's like the Madueke chance off the clipped ball from Enzo is kind of like a second phase off a set piece. It just like they didn't really get the volume in there. And part of that is because Palace defended very differently. So Palace defended with a 5 and they packed the middle of the pitch with defensive midfielders. So like if you look, let me pull the lineups up so you can see it. So like they end up with Wharton and Hughes just defending everything in the middle of the pitch. And then you have, I guess the 9 should be here. My numbers are a mess, sorry. And they just end up with the wingbacks are free to absolutely hammer Madueke and Neto. And Kamada and Eze, who both work very hard defensively, are like doing a lot of work to screen the double six. I thought it was a good way to set up from Glasner. I would probably set up the same way if I was playing Chelsea with like worse talent than them. But it was a pretty hard problem, and Chelsea are still fairly early in like the learning stage with this group. Chelsea had the exact same problem with low blocks of 5 last year. Like Poch's solution was turn the game into a track meet, which is what Chelsea tried to do in the second half, and it didn't really work. So time will tell. We'll see how they deal with it longer term. But I think there's like not red flags, but like some concern about how they deal with back fives. They really struggled in preseason against Wrexham, who played a 5-3-2. Like they looked horrific in that game, and that's Wrexham playing a deep block 5-3-2. But they were really good against Inter, who play a deep block 5-3-2. So I think there's solutions to be found there. And again, there's days where Madueke scores one of those 2 chances the way he did against Wolves, and it's 2-0 at halftime, the game's done. If Eze doesn't stick one in the top corner from 25 yards, the game's over. I want to see kind of what the FB ref, like more detailed stats, has it as, because I'm curious and I haven't looked at this yet, so this is unscripted, but I'm curious to see kind of some of the other metrics, what they look like. Not the summary. Let's see what we got. I want the big number. So like progressive carries, passes into the area. So like only 6 passes into the area. How many passes did they allow into the area? 5. So like Palace got into the box like a decent amount. Eze had a really good game, even though his goal is kind of just a worldie, but I thought he had a really good game. But yeah, that's kind of the Palace side of things. I actually don't think there's a ton to talk about with this game. Like I think it just sort of happens. There's a few questions in chat about it. Like there's something off about how we're set up. There's no compactness at all. I think like some of that was deliberate in the second half, where they were like, okay, we can't break them down, so we're going to open the game up and see if we can score. And they got chances out of it, but it wasn't great. But I don't agree at all with the first like 60 minutes. I thought they were very stable in defensive transitions, which was very different than the Wolves game. The Wolves game, they were not at all stable in defensive transitions. Yeah, Pano Fuddy brings it up. We felt a lot more comfortable defending transition. I totally agree. Seb Chapuis and I had like a big argument because he was like, we win it at the center backs every time, and I don't think that's true at all. And I thought Colwill, as Abdullahi Moomin says here, Cole was sensational. I thought Colwill and Fofana were so good yesterday, to a degree that I frankly didn't expect. Like Fofana 10 passes to the final third. This is mostly him just passing to the winger. Colwill only 4. Again, Chelsea went down the right, but like 2 misplaced passes from both of them the entire game. Short passes, but like whatever. Very few misplaced passes the whole game. I thought they were very good defensively. I think Colwill is starting to recognize that like he's actually a 6'5" giant of a human being, and he can win as many headers as he wants. I thought Colwill and Fofana were genuinely special yesterday, and I thought Colwill in transition was excellent. To the point that like I was pretty skeptical about them as a pairing, and I've never been that big a Fofana guy. I think Fofana is like not mid. Mid is harsh, but I think stylistically I don't love the kind of player Fofana is. But I think they are starting to build like a fun little pairing where like they are so far and away the 2 best center backs. It's pretty dramatic. And stylistically, I think they mesh. Like Colwill is a little bit more passive, covers ground, and Fofana just wants to go kill everything. So I think it works out pretty well. Other players in this performance, I thought Moises Caicedo was scandalously good. Like 5 of 6 tackles, 8 tackles and interceptions. I think one of the other reasons, I think it was Joe Tillett who brought this up before, why is Caicedo building deeper? So one of the things that I think, and I don't know how true this is purely personal opinion, but I would love somebody to ask Maresca this. So like what Maresca did with Leicester is that it would be Winks here, and Ndidi would basically be high as an 8 to pin. So like pinning is a concept that coaches talk about where like you are keeping a player in a spot so that they can't go do something else just by being there. So like if you think about a striker sits himself in the middle of a back 4, he pins, if these are 2 center backs, he pins both center backs because none of them wants to leave. Because if like you follow someone into midfield, he's going to run into the channel. So you pin both center backs there. What Maresca did with Ndidi at Leicester is he would use him to pin people high because Ndidi sucks on the ball deep. We have seen Caicedo sometimes be out here in the build and sometimes up here in the build. The problem, and Enzo is suffering from this because Enzo is always out here on the build, we're going to talk about that, is that if you turn the ball over, your best ball winner cannot impact the transition. But if your best ball winner is here, and it's like Gusto is high, because Gusto is like probably better in that spot and has had has been like not very good, but we can talk about that. Caicedo is here to stop transitions right away. He denied, like, how many times did we see? Eze got booed by Palace fans at one point because the ball broke to him, and Caicedo comes to close him down, and he's like, I'm not going. This octopus is going to kill me, and he turns around. And he got booed by Palace fans at 1-1. So I think, again, I don't know that that's what he's doing, but I think that is a pretty clever way to approach Caicedo. On the flip side of that, and I think a lot of people are starting to kind of ask how do we fit these two guys together? Because clearly you can't have them both sit here. I think you can, but clearly they don't want to sit them both there. When Enzo is out and high, he's always receiving facing backwards. I don't know how I get the arms, like these red guys. Can I give him arms? I want to give him, I don't know how to give him arms. But if I give him arms, he's always facing backwards. And that's not his game. And he's always on the left side of the pitch, where he always has to try outside of the foot with his right foot passes, because he doesn't pass with his left foot. He can't do it. It's not his thing. So like I don't know how to handle that. I think we might end up seeing more of them together. And like this, maybe. Or we might see like Disassi play more, or like when James is here, it's like this. And Cucurella's inside, and that's how you make the 3-2-5. Like, it might be something like that. I'm not sure. But I think that's the biggest question in terms of tactical solutions to solve right now. But other than that, yeah, like, I think Sanchez was kind of rubbish again. He nearly lets in a howler. And, like, this is going to be really harsh because Eze sticks it in the top corner, but, like, he should maybe save it. Like, he's not shooting it anywhere else. Leave earlier. You're 6'9". Go save it. But I'm probably being harsh on that one. But like on the game front, I don't have that much to say because really Chelsea deserve to win, and most of the time they do, and like I'm not gonna overreact to that. So we come back and we play Bournemouth, and we go from there. Top dog rig, how Enzo's being used to make him look like someone that won a competition to play in the Prem. The other thing, I will give him some grace for this performance because he played most of the match against Servette midweek, and Caicedo coming back from the first Servette game was horrific. It's still early in the season. Enzo's not the most physically talented guy anyways, so like I'm not going to kill him too bad for looking super gassed immediately, having to play twice in a week this early. And as a reward, him and Caicedo get to fly back to South America for some qualifiers, and will definitely be bad the first game back because they were every single time last year. Okay, we're gonna move on to transfer stuff. So if you have questions about this game, get them in the chat while we can talk about some of the stuff Maresca said post-game, because I think there's some interesting things to talk about there. But if you have other thoughts or questions about the game, get it in now. Yeah, so so Maresca had a quote post-game that people got real uppity about. But a thing I've liked so far is like his assessment very rarely has, again, and he's only coached 5 games, right? 3 league games and two conference league games. So like, let's see. But so far he feels like reasonably aligned with me after games, which I like. Like, as you said, we completely deserved the game. We had chances. We controlled the game. We didn't concede first half chances. They just had one shot on goal from distance out of Morton. Yeah, I agree. That's a good way to look at it. Their goal is a worldie. Overall, we deserved to win the game. The performance was good. Yeah, totally agree. After we conceded the goal, we lost a little bit our way to control the game. The game is up and down with transitions. In transition, Palace are very good. Again, totally agree. Like, that, I think, is a very accurate description of the game. After we came back to how we wanted to play, we get 3-4 chances at the end. Yes, I agree, because they got less transitional once Enzo went to the 6 and Mudryk came on and Felix went inside. So that's the other thing that happened was Neto came off, who I didn't think had a great game. Neto didn't have a great game, so Felix comes on. Felix, I think, is just not a winger for the way we want to play because he just wants to go in here all the time. He doesn't want to be out here. He wants to be in here. So when Mudryk came on and Felix goes inside, it got a lot better again. And I think that's a balancing act of, like, where do you play that guy? And I think now with Noah Seaman, he's almost exclusively going to be a 9 all the time, but we'll see. I agree with him that he thought it was a red card. Yep, the referee saw it a different way. I have nothing to say. I also appreciate that he's not berating officials all the time. Appreciate that. How concerned are you by lack of clean sheets? I'm always concerned. Yeah, great. And he doesn't care about the clean sheet. It's more about today's game. We conceded the goal, but we didn't concede any more chances. Like, this is what you want your coach to be. You want your coach to look at process, because process leads to results, right? Like, that's a good thing. It's not about some defensive problem for sure. There's things we can do better, but the team was good. In the end, you concede one shot on goal. Unfortunately, it's a fantastic goal, whatever. I think that's great. Jackson signed a new deal. Awesome. Love that. We can talk about that. Do you have faith in him? Yes, agree. Would you like to see VAR used for second yellows? I don't agree with this, whatever. It doesn't matter. Did you sign Sancho for low blocks? This is really interesting to me. I haven't seen this quote. We like that kind of player, especially in the last third against low blocks. Like today, when you face a team and you do not create, then you say, okay, we need this player, that player. But in these games, we had, even with a low block, we had 5, 6, 7 clear chances. There are not many things you can do to win the game, for sure, if you take the chance. Oh, that's okay. I like that. That's a good quote. When you revisit January, where did the other quote go about Chelsea being normal to lose? Oh, I think it was with Match of the Day. Let me see the quote. Sorry, so I can say it exactly. Match of the Day. Because he said something like, I don't want to get it wrong. Whatever, it doesn't matter. He said something like, this is not the Chelsea of 3 years ago that won the Champions League. You can't expect to win every week. And now, I'm going to give him some grace. I don't know what he meant by that. There's one angle that I don't love it. That angle being like, it is now acceptable to not win every game at Chelsea. I don't like that angle at all. That angle is bad. The other angle is like, Chelsea have to be realistic about where they are now. You are not a title winner. You are not a Champions League winner. Like, you have to be realistic about your talent, and that, like, you are not so good that you can avoid a footballing. Like, sometimes you get FM'd, right? Like, that's what people say. You get football managered. If that's what he's saying, I agree. But I'm not super. I don't really care about this. That was kind of all my thoughts on the game. Let's see what people were saying. I think you play end zone Caicedo in games like this where you have control most of the game. You need a bigger body in a more chaotic game. I think that's less about Enzo Caicedo and more about the third midfielder, right? Because, like, we saw Chelsea in big games last year play Enzo Caicedo and Gallagher, and it worked. I think you can't play Enzo Caicedo and, like, Cole Palmer or Nkunku or Felix, who are, like, not third midfielders. That, I think, is the real thing, is that Enzo is probably not defensively good enough to play in a midfield 2. And that's basically what you're playing 4-2-4 almost at that point. Do Leslie and Andre get integrated next season or shoulder? I'm going to talk about that in transfer stuff. Thoughts on Gusto being the right-sided 8? Like, the thing with him is he cannot be the deeper one because he's not a good enough passer. But I think here, like, ultimately, I think the goal with him is when he gets in this right channel is you play Madueke, and Madueke can slip for him to make the channel run from inside to cross. We've seen that action a few times this year, not that much. And against back threes, it's not there because you just get picked up by the center back. But I think that's the goal, and I think it makes more sense to do him there than it does to do him here. And with Madueke, you can't have them both on the outside. I think that is real. There are ways you can, right? Like if he's dribbling inside, and I think they could be more flexible. But we're going to find out after the break what happens with Reece James, who's a very different profile. Because if you stick Reece James here, that's a waste of everybody's time. So we'll see how that one goes. Substitutions, how do we feel about their impact? I've hated the subs so bad. Only 3 subs. What a waste, dude. Like, I don't even think... KDH, Dewsbury Hall has sucked. Okay, like, straight up, he's been terrible. You cannot tell me the last 10 minutes that you wouldn't have been better bringing him on for Enzo, who was toast physically. Like, there's no way. Use your subs. Like, freshness helps. And we have been a low sub team under Maresca, and the subs are late, and I really dislike it. Like, Nkunku could have come 10 minutes earlier. And I think it makes a big difference to the game. So I've not liked the subs. And I thought these particular subs didn't have good games. I think Maresca has some money in the bank with pressers. Yeah, maybe. I think some people are mad about him, but whatever. Mudryk quietly the best. I don't know if I agree with that. He has the one really nice pass for Jackson, but I don't think he was great when he came on. I just want him to be a relentless taker-oner. Just get the ball and drive at people every time. Bad Rabbits dropped the exact quote. Probably one thing that has to be clear. Chelsea 3 years ago in the Champions League, but now it's not that kind of Chelsea. So now sometimes you don't win. It's normal. Yeah. It's somewhat horrifying after the window ends to see the quality or lack thereof on the bench. Yeah. So let's just jump into transfers now. And there's another question about Andre Santos. Let's jump into transfers now. Also, by the way, Chelsea sneakily climbing up the XGD table, 4th already, but it's early days. It doesn't really mean anything for another 6-7 games, but better than not being up there. So let's talk about the transfers, all the transfers that happen. I'm just going to go one by one. I'm not even going to talk about deadline. Well, I will talk about the deadline, but we'll go through one by one. I wish you could sort them by like the date that they happened, but whatever. For some reason, you can't. Pedro Neto, way too much money for a guy who doesn't score and is always injured. I think he's probably going to be good, but like you saw against Palace, like he was just okay. He creates 0 shots and he takes 0 shots. What are you going to do? Felix, way too much money. We talked about this on the podcast already. I don't know where he plays consistently. It's just a lot of money and a lot of wages for a sub. But I think he's a good player. So, like, we'll leave that for what it is. Dewsbury Hall's a weird one. My initial reaction to Dewsbury Hall was really negative. Like I said, I was going to jump in the ocean if it happened, which I did do, by the way. But then I kind of did some more reading on it and did some more research. And, like, his championship numbers were so good that I kind of got it. And now I'm back to, like, what the heck? Because he's been so bad. He looks like physically not even close to the level. So I wonder if he's, like, injured or something. But, like, he had a 4-yard head start on Tsunomoto, the Servette right back, and got caught. And I don't really understand. Jorgensen let in a true, like, mess of a goal against Servette. I didn't like the signing to begin with, but the back half of his season at Villarreal was a lot better than the first half, so maybe there's some improvement there. I bet he's going to take Sanchez's spot by the end of the year. The Penders deal, I think this fee is actually a lot less than this, plus add-ons. Like, I think it's actually like 10 plus 10 in add-ons. People in Belgium think he's amazing. And being 19 and playing senior games really, really matters. Really matters. Fricka Fracka, it's crazy how similar Neto looked to Mudryk during the game, always cutting inside. Wonder if he'll adapt to left wing or he'll be best right wing. So this is a tactical thing. This is not a him thing. First off, Neto has played way more left wing than you think. His time at Wolves is basically split even. However, when you play back 5, right? So, well, let's start with a 4. So if you play a back 4, as the ball comes across to you as the winger, the fullback is coming from inside. So if you want to run down the line, you can whenever you want. And because the fullback is coming from inside, if you want to drop the shoulder and go inside, you can do that. It's much easier. Palace defended with a back 5 and with 2 DMs and with basically fullbacks at center back. They played Chris Richards and Nathaniel Klein, who are like outside. Like, Nathaniel Klein is a career right back, and Chris Richards like played half of his time at left back before he came to Palace. So as the ball comes to you, first off, you're receiving with a wing back on your ass. So like, you can't really just dribble around the outside. So that's number one. The second is now you take your touch inside and you have a DM who's here for help, and you have an outside center back. So even if you do rinse this guy inside or outside, there's help and there's nowhere to go. Like, Madueke has a quote-unquote good game, right? Like, Madueke, if we go look, what did he do? Let's see, summary. Like, Madueke has 0.6 XG on 3 shots, but if I look at his possession actions, Madueke is only 3 take-ons. He's normally an 8 take-on a game player, and he's only 1 for 3. He's normally a 50% take-on guy. He's 5 progressive carries. Normally, he's more like 9 or 10. He's a 1 carry into the penalty area. Normally, he's more like 2 or 3. Like, playing like a winger when you have a wing back on your ass is really, really hard. It's very difficult to play. So we'll see on Penders. Anselmino, I have no thoughts. I've seen like one clip of him. I haven't done any deep dive on him. I don't like the fee. I think it's too expensive for a 19-year-old. Like, it's not like he's 17 or something like that. Vega, I was like vaguely interested because he's played a decent amount of minutes for 20, and I think he's an interesting profile, and he's honestly probably been better than expected, but I will see long term. Wiley, I hate the fee. It's way too much money. It's way too much money for a guy who is not that good in MLS, and I've watched him a lot in MLS. Way too much money, and stupid to bring him to Chelsea. You should have gone to Strasbourg first on a permanent. Way too much money. Guiu, love the deal. It's basically a free hit. Tosin, I don't think is that good. We're not going to talk about it. Sancho. So, a lot of Chelsea's business, and I talked about this on the podcast that I just recorded, a lot of Chelsea's business in a vacuum looks good. So, like, if I go look at Sancho historically, this is a dude who 3 years ago at 20 years old, or 4 years ago at 20 years old, was putting up insane production numbers. Insane production numbers. And some of that is by benefiting for playing one of the best teams in a fairly weak league. And some of that is that he got to play with Erling Haaland, which is always nice. But genuinely exceptional production for a super young guy. He goes to United and is pretty terrible. He has one good year, but he's playing for a team that's been dysfunctional in attack for 4 years, for a coach that is clearly an asshole and not very good. In a vacuum, getting him for, I think the deal is 20 to 25 million obligation if Chelsea come 14th or higher. Chelsea are covering the majority of this United wage, so call it something like 175, which is about 3/4, and he's taking a big pay cut to come to Chelsea. In a vacuum, that's a great deal. Like, I think that's a smart, not a great deal, but I think it's a reasonable rehab project. However, it's not a vacuum. Chelsea have Mudryk, and they have Neto that we just talked about, and they have Madueke, who's blossoming, and you cannot play Nkunku and Palmer together unless one of them plays as a winger. And on top of that, you are now sending Sterling out, which we're going to talk about. I don't get it. I hope it works, but I don't get it. Kind of scary how only Neto makes the first 11 of our signings this window. I agree. I think it's insane that we spent £250 million or 250 million euros, or like, what's the total spend here? 240 million euros is the total spend, and you got one starter. That's insane to me that you spent that much money and got one starter. So that's the Sancho deal. On the outbound side, I think and that's it. And then the other one to talk about is Osimhen. I have like avoided talking about Osimhen because it's like not that fun to talk about, but I think let me just like pull it up so I have something to show on screen when I talk about it. The end result for Osimhen, I think, is that this is fine for everybody. He makes more than I would pay him. He's good, but I think he's just good. And I think he's like a 75th, 80th percentile striker, but he wants to be paid like a 100th percentile striker. He wants to be paid like a guy who scores 30 goals every season. And he's not that. He's a guy who scored 30 goals one season. And I think when you look at how good Jackson is, who now has 2 goals in 3 games, like, I just wouldn't put somebody in front of that guy. Like, I think the profile striker Chelsea should be getting is a backup striker who's like 23 to 25, has a reasonable track record of scoring 10 goals a season, mostly as a sub, and that's what it is. Like, go get me a Simon Banza, or go get me like what Loic Remy was the season he was there under Mourinho. Like, get me that guy. So I think it's fine. It's fine. And I hope they don't go back in. I I saw somebody sent me something from WhatsApp today that Chelsea offered him like insane wages, and he still said no. But it is definitely not true. So that's kind of the one inbound that didn't happen. That like I'm very very fine. Yeah, John Duran. Duran's too expensive, and I heard he wants ginormous wages, which is why that deal didn't happen. But like Duran is the right profile for sure. On the outbounds, Matson fee is great. It stinks that you had to take Kellyman back for a big fee. Like I don't really understand that. You for sure could have gotten other deals done. We talked about Gallagher before. It's an okay fee for how good he is, and given he had a year left. Hall is last year's business. Lukaku out is fine. It's done. It is what it is. Hutchinson fee is low, I think, for what he was. We should have just signed Omaradian. Yeah, I liked the Omaradian deal. It was a little bit pricey for my blood. And I would have been super into the deal that Porto ended up doing, where you give Atleti a 50% sell on and you pay 12 million. I would have been so into that. Because I think like that's a player you're going to keep for a while, and who cares if they take some of the upside. I would have been super, super into that deal. I think the Hutchinson fee is really low. I think it's low for how good he was in the championship, but he only had a year left on his deal, so like I don't really know what they were supposed to do. The Moreira, whatever, like I think so you only have 6 loan spots. And because you only have 6 loan spots, development spaces in the club. Bad Rabbits wasn't the Porto deal only for 50%. Yeah, 50% sell on. So like you pay 12 if you sell him for 30, they take 9 because it's 50% of the profit. Which is fine by me. Like I would totally do that deal, because he's going to sit and be your backup for, you're going to keep him for 5 years, and then if you sell him for 50 million, who cares? Yeah, I would have done that deal. So like, yeah, there's only 6 loans, right? There's only so many development spots that you have. You can't get stuck. You can't get stuck. So like guys like Kennedy went on like 10 loans, or Baba Rahman, like those guys went on 10 loans. You can't just sit there anymore. So if you decide after a year, like, yeah, we're not investing any more development in this guy, and you can get a fee and get off him, whatever. You'd like that number to be higher, but whatever. Ziyech free, Malang Sarr buyout, all these other guys, whatever. Tino Andrin to Empoli on a free, but 50% sell on is fun. The loans. Sterling to Arsenal. Chelsea are paying half his wages. I don't even like Sterling that much. He's very frustrating. Is Jadon Sancho better than him? I don't know. Probably not right now. I don't really understand why he got punted into the Stars. I thought he actually had a pretty good preseason. So I know why. It's because they want to get rid of his wages. But once you can't get rid of his wages, like I think you could probably just make better decisions with that deal. And now, let's say he has a really good season at Arsenal. Like, can you find a deal for him next year? Do Arsenal do the deal? I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know what the shape of that looks like. Leslie and Andre, somebody asked, like, do they work their way back in? I don't know what Leslie is, right? Like, I sometimes am like, well, he's huge. He should be a defensive midfielder, but he has mostly looked terrible as a defensive midfielder. He hasn't played yet for Southampton, and I friggin' said this, that I don't think this is going to be a good loan. I don't think he's going to get time there, because I don't think he's so much better than what they have already that he's going to play for sure. He's just going to be cover unless there's an injury. So I don't like that loan. And Andre keeps scoring at Strasbourg, which is fun. And I think that's a good loan for him, that he's going to play lots and he's going to get lots of opportunities and he's going to look really good. And we can reevaluate in January, but I think he's like a full season there of him really thriving will be very good. And then you can decide what you want to do with him. I think Leslie played Carabao, not... let me see. I don't know if maybe he played in the cup. Yeah, he played 63 minutes in the cup, which is whatever. I don't think I would be pretty surprised if both of them were back next season. I think Andre will probably be, but I don't think Ugochukwu is. And I don't know. I don't know if I think he replaces Enzo Fernandez next year in the 8 role. Enzo's weird, man. I don't know if you can move him. Like, he makes a lot of money and has huge amortization. Like, he's not moving for less than $100 million. So that is what it is. The Broja deal to Everton I also dislike because he's injured and he's not going to play until October. And I don't think... if Broja wasn't going to move on a permanent, so a deal with an obligation, not an option, an obligation, I think you were better off sending him to the championship to actually go and score a ton of goals. Just a ton of goals. And I don't know how much he's going to score for Everton. But maybe they play Calvert-Lewin and Broja as like the Bash brothers, and it works pretty well for him. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with him. Petrovic for Strasbourg, I like. He's going to get a lot of minutes, and I think it works for him. He signed a new deal with reduced wages this year, but higher wages in later years to make the loan work, which is not a good sign for the club's financial health, but we'll see. But I think that's an okay deal. Trev to Palace, I love. I would be shocked if they didn't buy him at the end of the year because I think he's really good and I think he's a great fit there. But like I just look at it, and clearly Chelsea didn't get any overtures to move Disasi or Badiashile, who, depending who you talk to, Chelsea have been trying to shift Badiashile for the past 6 months, since January basically of last year. So I would very happily get off of him or Disasi more readily. And I think Trev gives you much better cover at right back than Disasi does. But he'll be great at Palace. Kepa extended his contract by a year and went on loan to Bournemouth for full wage coverage but no fee. We'll talk about Angelo. Don't worry, Thomas Wilkinson. That just happened. Kepa extended his contract a year to reduce his amortization hit because he's going to leave for free. So Kepa was bought for 80 million euros. If we go look. So Kepa was bought for 80 million euros. And on a 7-year deal, which means his amortization is something like 11 million euros. So if he took a loan this year and then left for free next year, his hit for the year is 11 million. If he extends his contract by a year, takes a loan this summer, and then moves permanently next summer, his amortization hit is only 5.5. So I think this is Chelsea trying to give themselves as much flexibility for 1 year as they can, because this year is kind of the year that PSR is going to get really ugly. I hate it. I kind of think they should just take their medicine. But I guess that's what they're choosing to do, and he's going to play the whole season at Bournemouth. So that's that deal. What other loans do we have? Gilchrist Sheffield United is playing a lot. Caleb Wiley went to Strasbourg. Bash to Burnley with an obligation for like 12 million, something like that. Which is a good deal for them. I think that'll work out. Slonina's been looking really good at Barnsley, and Eddie Beach is at Crawley Town as their backup goalie. Are Bournemouth paying Kepa's wages? Yes, they are. Full, allegedly. We'll never forgive Thibaut from Fricka Fracka. That summer's so funny as like a turning point for Chelsea, because if you look at that 6-month stretch, Antonio Conte's number one target was Virgil van Dijk. And the club's first number one goalkeeper target was Alisson in the summer. So January, summer. They don't do the Van Dijk deal because they have some apprehensions about his knee and the fee and the wages. So they don't do the Van Dijk deal. Instead, they buy Rudiger, maybe? Not Rudiger. I can't remember who they bought. They buy a center back that's not Van Dijk in the Conte era. I can't remember who that would have been. And then in the summer, they bid for Alisson. They were the first club to bid for Alisson, but they didn't pay what Roma wanted, which was only like 5 or 6 million more than they bid. And they're like, okay, well, we'll just convince Courtois to stay. Then Courtois dips, and now they scramble into Kepa at the last minute. Like, if you remember, Chelsea had already played a game. Before Kepa joined. I think his first game was, or like preseason was over, and he came in straight to the first league game. Something like that. So that was a very, like, imagine the world where we have Van Dijk and Alisson for the last 7 years instead. Maybe that Tuchel team would have won the league or something. But that's the transfers. And then Angelo, as Thomas Wilkins said, Angelo just moved to Saudi Arabia for $23 million. He's in the same vein as kind of the Diego Moreira deal to me, where like you pay $12 million, I think, for him. Let me check. I think $12 million and 15. I don't think that's real. I think it's less than that. You pay some low teens million for him, and you see how it goes for a year. And like, I thought he had a good season at Strasbourg, but not a season good enough that you're like, okay, this 20-year-old is definitely going to play for Chelsea, right? Like, you will never play as a winger at Chelsea like this. Like, it's just simply not going to happen. I keep saying that I think somebody should turn him into a fullback. I think that would be really fun. But like, whatever, you get it, you try it for a year, you see how it goes, and then you double your money basically in a year. So I like that deal a lot in terms of moving him out. Overall, pretty bad window. Like, didn't address any of the core needs, which were like, to me at the beginning of the summer, my core needs were, I wanted some clarity at goalkeeper, which I don't have any more clarity. You just replaced Petrovic with someone basically the same level as Petrovic, so that doesn't make me feel better. I wanted clarity about, I wanted a backup 9, which we didn't go get. And I wanted ball-winning defensive midfielder depth. And maybe that's Lavia, but he's already injured. Can we talk about David Washington? Washington was allegedly moving to Strasbourg for 25 million euros, 21 million euros. And there was a rumor that Chelsea didn't do the deal because they thought it would be scrutinized too heavily. The Athletic reported today that that was never a permanent deal. It was only going to be a loan deal, and that 2 top 10 Premier League clubs inquired. I would move him permanently if the right bid came. Because, again, like, he's another guy who's played only PL2 minutes, a few first-team minutes, and doesn't really look at the level. Like, okay. At the same time, if he had gotten every second that Guiu had gotten in preseason, I'd be a lot more intrigued to know what's going on. It's very frustrating to... The thing with carrying a big squad, and this is like one of the negative externalities of carrying a big squad, is like, you have too many players that you can't even like give guys 500 minutes here and there to do whatever. Like, you just don't even have the resources to do that. And if your coach doesn't make subs, you definitely don't have resources to do that. Like, one of the things I've loved so much about Arne Slot so far at Liverpool is like, this guy is getting Connor Bradley in every single game. So Trent and Robertson's legs are being saved. Like, he's already saved them like 70 minutes through 3 games just by doing the subs, because we're up 2-0. We don't need him. And I worry about Chelsea long term. It's not even shop window minutes; it's development minutes as well. if they were looking at a loan, why didn't he go on loan? I think because they knew the rest of the bomb squad. Like, David Washington is still young enough that if he plays PL2 for a season, it's not a big deal. It's not going to, like, ruin his career. And he might have domestic loan interest. Datra Fofana clearly has no domestic loan interest or doesn't want to be here. And I think that is also true for guys like Angelo and Cassidy and a few of the other guys who are looking for loans. Would I keep Datra Fofana as a second striker? Yes, 100%. I would have sent Guiu on loan and kept Datra Fofana as my second 9. I think he's actually very good and is like at the level to contribute now and does a bunch of the stuff that Jackson does in terms of hold the ball up and link play and run and go, that he would be legitimately very useful as a backup 9. And you could get 1,200, 1,500 minutes for him, no problem. I think he would like rip Conference League. I mean, he did. He played Conference League level for Molde. Like, I have no idea what that guy has done that people don't like him. What I have heard is that he has quote-unquote attitude problems, which is often coded language when we're talking about black attacking players. I don't know if that's real. I don't know if that's made up. I don't know what. But what I have heard is that he has attitude problems and he fell out with the coach at Union Berlin, and that him and Vincent Kompany didn't get on at Burnley either, and that there was basically no interest in keeping him around at Chelsea. My guess is he'll go to Greece and he'll destroy the Greek league and he'll score 15 goals or something, and then we'll be having this conversation in January. But I think it's tough. Has Guiu had a clean shot on goal in 9 appearances? I don't think he has. He had 3 shots on net against Inter. I think he had a very good preseason. Like, I was pretty high on preseason on him being the backup or third striker. And I probably over-indexed for what preseason was. But I think he's like, for a 19-year-old with fewer than 1,000 pro minutes, I think he's quite good. Like, I'm not worried long term. And if he stays and plays Conference League all season, I'm not super fussed about it. We played basically the second half of last season with only Jackson as striker, and Poch couldn't find any time for the youth strikers. Do you think directors didn't appreciate his use of signings? I think there were a lot of disagreements between Maurizio Pochettino and the directors on direction, on who to play, on how to play, on a few different things. And I think it again, like, I think there were reasons to keep Poch in terms of stability. I think the players vaguely liked him. I think the team played roughly to their talent level. I think he's a reasonably agreeable guy who kept the team fit and blah, 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 blah. At the same time, like, he refused to work with a set-piece coach, is the reporting. He didn't really love not having input on transfers, which, again, I don't want my coach to have real input on transfers. You have to earn that by being good. Clearly there was disagreement because João Felix is back and Chelsea could have bought him for less money than this last summer, and he said no. So I think there was a lot of disagreement on that. But also Jackson was fit all the time and was basically never injured. So, like, there was no reason to not play Jackson every game. And they didn't have European competition. It was just the late cup rounds. So I think it'll be the same thing this season. He'll play every game he's fit for, bar the Conference League, because the Conference League, they're playing like the most random teams you've ever seen. But that'll be fun. We'll see. Alrighty, get your last round of questions in if you have questions, but I think I'm kind of winding down there. I don't really have a ton of other thoughts on this weekend. International break's going to be so boring. I've actually been like very excited for when Chelsea games are happening this year, which is like unusual. But I think we're going to be fine, guys. I think we're going to be fine. Like, this is all one game, but it is what it is. Also, we had the same number of points after 3 games as last year. Last year we drew Liverpool, beat Luton, lost to Nottingham Forest, which is way worse than Man City, Palace, and Wolves. So we'll see on that front. What are your thoughts about the season? I'm excited. I think we're going to come top 4. But but I don't think it's a sure thing. Like, my prediction for the season is we go out early in the cups, depending on draw, and we win the Conference League and we come fourth. That's my prediction for the year. I'm the most confident about winning the Conference League, because if the season starts to go poorly, he will start playing the starters in the Conference League, and we'll steamroll everyone playing starters in the Conference League. It won't be close, I don't think. There are no good teams in that competition this year. That's what I think about the season. But we'll see. I'm kind of curious to see how things change. I'm curious to see what other fancy things we do to the build. I'm curious to see if anything changes defensively after the break. We are still doing like the flat 4-4-2 Pachi thing. I'm very curious to see if we see any development there. Actually, let's talk about this for 1 second. For a time in this game, so Palace built back three. Well, they basically never built. They kicked along a lot. Palace built back three. And for a time, Chelsea pressed in a diamond. Very briefly, for like 20 minutes, they pressed in a diamond. But it was kind of, if you've ever watched Arteta and Arsenal, the way they press is like skewed like this. So they have one winger high to encourage one way, and then they have the opposite winger low, and it's basically like a shifted diamond. And as soon as the ball goes wide one side, the winger sprints, and then this one just gets an arrow. And they can't go back because you have two strikers and you have the 6 picked. And I quite liked it. I thought it was very interesting. Top four is very wishful thinking. Not even a little bit wishful, I don't think. This team is like obviously competent. And like Spurs are shit. And Newcastle are not very good. And Villa have Champions League to deal with and are not very deep. Like, I think Liverpool, Arsenal, and City are way, way, way ahead of everybody else. But I think Chelsea are like pretty comfortably the best of the rest. Not so much the best of the rest that it's impossible they got caught, but like I would say better than 50% chance they come fourth. Spurs look not good at all. And Villa have like fluked 2 late John Duran winners. Like, he's not going to score 20-yard headers every game. I don't like that. Do you think the philosophy starts with Igbali and Bully, or the directors? And do you think the directors' jobs could be in trouble if we have a bad season? I think if we have a bad season, I think one of the directors will go for sure. My understanding is that the directors have done a very good job of having the owner's ear. Who is setting that direction? I don't know. But I think they have a lot of pull and a lot of decisions about where we're going. Thoughts on Maresca so far? Green flags, red flags, beige flag. He's fine so far. It's just a different flavor to what Poch was last year. It looks different, but it's basically the same. Which answers the same question. Top dog, are we better than we were last year? No, I think we're about the same. And last year we were probably the 4th best team, or pretty comfortably the fourth best team. Fuego, but Villa had to deal with Conference League. Yeah, Conference League is whatever. You just rotate the whole team. Like Chelsea plays 0 starters. It doesn't even count as fixture congestion because you played nobody until the semifinal. United are dropping the spaghetti or something. What does that one say? It looks like United and Spurs are dropping the spaghetti. United are rubbish. That team is horrific, and I think there's no chance that Ten Hag survives till Christmas. But that's a whole different thing. Bournemouth's high diamond press really impressed me last season. How would you set up the 3-2 Caicedo CB to break it? Yeah, so diamonds are really difficult to play through because they have so much density inside. The solution to playing through diamonds is this player. How do you pull this player out and this player out to get to the other side? So like if you play one way, can you bring them over and bring them over and bring them over so that you can hit the other side comfortably? And then it's like, well, if this player is going to jump, can you swing and then hit the channel? I think the most frequent way to do it is to try and stretch them out. So like what we would see with Chelsea is I think it would be Like let me put these guys in a diamond because it'll be easier. Like I think the way Chelsea would do it is something like, they would go 3 diamond 3, so they'd match the diamond, but it would be like this. It would be like this, I think. And so they'd be like full width here, and you'd end up with like, I don't know, this or something. Something like this to really, really stretch them out so that like the fullbacks have tough dilemmas if the fullbacks want to come match all the way here and like leave Jackson to go 1v2 into the channels. I think that's probably how Chelsea would play it, and really try and get the fullbacks to come and then hit long passes into the channels for people to run onto. But that's a fun question. I'm very curious to see how the Bournemouth games go. I think Iraola is like a quite good coach. Would you rather have Slot or Maresca? Slot was my number one choice post Graham Potter. It was Slot and Ruben Amorim. And Ruben Amorim was like my, if we wanted to go Chelsea roots and go like ultra defensive back 3 counterattack guy. But Slot and Amorim were my number ones. Mostly because, and not even because, Slot's Feyenoord played a fairly bog standard 4-2-3-1 with some good ideas in possession and lots of talent and whatever. The reason I like Slot so much is what I've heard from everyone who's worked with him is that he's extremely open to new ideas and extremely open to learning. Like Slot is a guy who in the summer is calling and WhatsApping analysts to ask about his team from the outside, or to ask about new ideas, or to ask about set piece coaches, or to ask about analytics. And I think the reporting is that like Chelsea tried to get Slot and he said no. Like he was like, this is not the one for me. But I would have been really into Arne Slot. I think he's a very, very good coach. Thoughts on Nkunku and Jackson together up top with Palmer 10 way down the line. I mean, that would be Chelsea playing a diamond, which we'll never play, or it would be a back 3, which I think, again, we'll never play. So, like, the only way that happens is if it's Palmer and Nkunku as double 10s. So, like, you could get there in a 3-4-3. You could get there in a 4-3-3 with double 10s. I think we might see some of that against worse teams, where we'll see, like, a true defensive midfielder and then 2 of Nkunku, Palmer, and Felix as 10s. Like, I think that might happen. But I would personally never choose to play that way. I think that is suicidal. I'm excited for Cueva to properly get better in. Yeah, I agree. I'm kind of curious to see how that goes longer term, because the set pieces against Palace were just okay, but also like guys missed free headers, so it's hard to say. Alrighty, we're gonna wrap it up there. 36 people jumping in on a bank holiday Monday with no game on, and it's like 11 p.m. in England. I'll take it, guys. So thanks for tuning in. Listen to the podcast episode that goes out tomorrow, and if you like these streams, drop it a like, drop a subscription, retweet it, whatever, because the more people watch, the more I'll do them. It's more fun, because when people are talking in the chat, we can talk about stuff, right? I'll answer this last question, and then we'll go. Do you think Maresca is limiting Nkunku because his wages are higher? Is that too conspiratorial? I think he's limiting him because he was always injured last year. That I think is the end of it. But I do think like Baseman has a conspiracy theory that Nkunku is going to get moved because he makes too much money, which is, we'll see, maybe not impossible. But we'll leave it there. Thank you all for jumping in, and